Good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started here. Can you all hear me? Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Ewalt, and I serve as a board member for the LBJ Future Forum. On behalf of the Future Forum, thank you all for joining us this evening. Future Forum advances the conversation about what's possible through policy. An initiative of the LBJ Presidential Library and Foundation, Future Forum facilitates community events to inspire a higher level of political discourse in Austin. Following LBJ's favorite biblical directive to come, let us reason together, Future Forum's programming aims to thoughtfully bridge the many diverse perspectives inherent in our regional political challenges. Our curated programming includes panel discussions, town halls, Q&As with community leaders, and more, all free and open to the public. Upcoming events include a panel on the future of cannabis in Texas on October 29th, and a discussion of hip-hop and democracy on November 18th. Future Forum is a member-supported organization, and if this mission aligns with your values, I encourage you to join as a member tonight by visiting our membership table in the back. Becoming a member means select networking and social events, in addition to special access to speakers, exhibits, and more at the LBJ Library. Membership in Future Forum starts at $35 a year and is an excellent way to engage with the fellow doers and builders of our collective future. So on to tonight's event. In June, the Texas legislature passed a groundbreaking incentive package to boost the film industry here in Texas. With a $1.5 billion commitment over the next decade, the state is positioned to become a national powerhouse for film, television, and digital media production. We will explore what the new incentive program means for Texas creatives, local economies, and the future of storytelling in the state, and how Texas stacks up against other states. This evening's program is generously sponsored by 26 Keys, BP, and Texas Mutual Insurance Company. To kick off our discussion, please allow me to introduce Kyle Hawley, co-founder and creative director at 26 Keys. At 26 Keys, Kyle has been instrumental in shaping key marketing and branding initiatives, including the company's relocation from Los Angeles to Austin in 2024, and helping deepen connections within the Texas film community through events, speaker series, brand development, and more. She's seventh-generation Texan and got her start in the film industry right here in Austin as an intern for Richard Linklater's Detour Productions. I think we have a photo of her in those days, if that's coming up. There you go. She is also the founder and creative director of Letterpress Play, an Austin-based letterpress studio and stationery store. Please join me, in giving a warm welcome to Kyle Hawley.
Good evening. Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm going to mark through maybe the first four things on that. So I'm going to just jump ahead here. To the point about when I think about the central driver of the series, the first series that we created here in Austin, which was My Generation. It was all about what it was to be young and in this charmed city. That's how I felt when I was here years ago, when I started my internship with Richard Linklater and then went on to work in film and television. It was that Texas incentive that allowed us to grow this community of film. There was an absence, a loss when that fell away from us. And we now, for the last couple of decades, have been looking to find our footing again, to really see what we could do to survive what was maybe not the directive from the Capitol, but still build this community. And now we've been fortunate enough to find that incentive again in our partnership and the work that the community has done around us. We're so excited to bring 26 Keys here from Los Angeles. We've lived here since 2009. We've raised our children here, and it has been my great hope as a seventh generation Texan to bring what we built in the greater community of film back to my home, and heal and reshape the community that I worked so hard to build in my early 20s. And so I'm so thrilled and excited to be a part of this community. We're honored tonight to be partnering with the LBJ Future Forum. With that, I'd love to introduce our moderator for the evening, Megan Creydt. Megan is the executive producer of story development at Texas Monthly, where she leads the transformative magazine and award-winning journalism into film, television, and other formats. You can see her next at the AGLIF Festival on October 18th during the screening of the doc film Night in West Texas by Austin-based filmmaker Deb Eskenazi. Please welcome Megan Creydt.
Got sitting, right?
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you all for being here. We have such an incredible panel that I will introduce you to now, and hopefully I don't blow them up too terribly here. But we have Jeff Nichols, acclaimed screenwriter, director, likely needs no introduction, honorary Austinite, member of the Texas Film Hall of Fame, despite his Arkansas heritage. We have adopted him. We have Iliana Sosa, a documentary and feature narrative filmmaker from El Paso, Texas, whose debut feature, What We Leave Behind, won multiple awards at South by and was a New York Times Critics Pick. She recently directed an episode of Lawrence Wright and Alex Gibney's God Save Texas and is a professor at RTF here at UT. And then we have Stephanie Whallon, the director of the Texas Film Commission, who I'm sure everybody will have questions for tonight. So we'll try to get through some of the details of those things in our conversation, but we can also save some of those for Q&A. I just wanted to note that Stephanie, in looking into her, I discovered that she has an MFA in film production and screenwriting, which is a pretty incredible thing in someone who's running the Texas Film Commission, who's both managing the bureaucracy of all of this and also really understands the creative end of things. So I'm thrilled to have you all here. Let's give them a welcome, please. And if it looks like we're sweating, I think we all are.
Lights are really bright.
Still at all. So I'd love to just start with, Stephanie, how did this happen? You know, as Kyle was saying, it's been years where everybody's, been working and wondering what can we do to get the incentives back up. There's such a great creative community in Texas. What was it about this moment that brought about this legislation?
I wish I knew all the things that went into creating all the magic that happened in the last few months, but I think it was a combination of a lot of things, of a lot of people like 26 Keys deciding they wanted to have their production company here. They wanted to work in Texas. They lived here. They wanted to continue their creative life here. There are a lot of folks and companies that did that sort of 2021 and on. I think there's a lot of just shifting in the industry. And, our program has been funded since 2009. It was just not funded robustly. And I think that a lot of legislators thought that it wasn't worth funding because production didn't go beyond Austin and Dallas. We've proved that that is not the case. You have films happening in El Paso. You have films happening in West Texas, in East Texas, in the metroplexes, but all over. And we really started to push that information out. We also have a community program called the Film Friendly Texas program, and we just hit a pretty huge milestone. We've certified 200 communities in Texas to welcome production. And these are not big cities, these are your small towns. These are towns that want to learn how to welcome a creative community. They want to benefit from the economic benefits of that. And that those community reps are the ones that are talking to their representatives and their legislators and saying, hey, this is important to have these industries in our regions, in our towns. We have people working. The pandemic was another big reason. People spread out more. They moved home. They could work remotely. And so they were getting more involved in their communities in a different way. And so I think there's a convergence of all of that. And we just saw a lot. So in the previous session, when we were awarded $200 million in funding for the program, we saw a lot of light bulbs go on, but really they stayed on. And in this legislative session, they were able to make more significant changes. So.
Thank you. Jeff and Iliana, I'd love to ask both of you about your experience with the creative community here in Texas, and specifically Austin, as you're both based here. And you know, if you could describe the differences of being a creative filmmaker based here versus based in, say, in Los Angeles or somewhere else. What makes this place unique?
Go for it.
You know, I went to film school at UCLA, got my MFA. I was in LA for almost 9 years, and I wasn't really making the work that I wanted to do out in LA. And so coming back to Texas for me was not like coming back home. I'm originally from El Paso, born and raised, but like I really started to do the work that I wanted to do here. And, you know, the Austin Film Society welcomed me with big arms. Like, you know, I started there working as an artist services manager and meeting a bunch of filmmakers, and the community was always really welcoming. And, you know, I thought, wow, can I make, you know, a career here? And that's when I started slowly working on What We Leave Behind. And, you know, AFS was a big supporter of that, gave me like one of my first grants. And so I felt like I was able to have the space and time to really hone my craft here, even though I had lived in LA and could stay there and work. But I feel like what makes Texas special, and I think I'm biased because I'm from here and born and raised in El Paso, was it just gave me just this sense that I could really dedicate time to my craft here. And I wasn't so much having to hustle in the same way as in LA, you know. And I think the community here at the time, and still to this day, was just really welcoming and found like a great support system.
Yeah, I moved here, I think in 2003. I graduated from film school in North Carolina and went back home to live with my folks for a year in Little Rock. And I worked at a pizza place, and I was gonna write like the greatest screenplay ever written, and that didn't work. And so my brother was in law school here at UT and said I could sleep on his couch for a year. So I moved down here, and I immediately got work on a film called Be Here to Love Me by Margaret Brown about Townes Van Zandt. And that was my first real job out of college, out of film school. And it introduced me to this incredible town, these incredible people. We shot in almost every dive bar in Austin. The first time I went to the Cactus Cafe was, you know, on that film. So not only was I getting introduced to the Austin music scene, but I was also getting introduced to Austin film scene. Lee Daniels shot that film. Karen Skloss edited that film. These were filmmakers that, you know, are still here and still working, and were extremely important to my development as a filmmaker. And then, you know, actually because of Margaret, I met my wife, and she's from Texas, and so then I had to stay here. And since then, you know, it's really, I've never made a film here, but we're working on that. But what I have experienced here is just an incredible group of people. And it evolves, it kind of rotates, this group of filmmakers. You know, Kat Candler, Andrew Bajowski, the Zellner brothers, Todd Rohal's coming to show his insane new film in a couple weeks. You know, Brian Poiser, there were always filmmakers that I could always just go have a taco with and talk about where we were at, even as our careers kind of started going in different directions or maybe reaching different levels. It was just always extremely valuable to talk about the process of making films with these people. I think it's hard to overestimate the impact that had on my ability to stay confident in making films here and being based here. You know, inevitably, I remember that first year I was picking up PA work, and I picked up somebody from LA, some screenwriter from the airport, and I was like, I'm living in Austin now. He's like, you have to go to LA. You just have to go to LA. And I had heard that before, and LA terrified me. And it seemed very, very far away from where people make things, where I wanted to make things. Definitely that's where a lot of the decisions are made about making things. Less and less now, but it just didn't feel like a place that creatively inspired me. And Austin very much did. So I owe a lot to this town. I owe my existence in life to this town.
And your marriage.
And my marriage.
Your marriage to boot.
Yeah.
I've heard that too from so many people in the TV and film community in Austin, that this has always been a city where people sort of help you up the ladder. People are always reaching down and helping you up, and that's a pretty unique thing in the entertainment industry, I think. So
Absolutely.
We're glad you were here. Let's talk a little bit about the state of the industry at large. I know that that looms large for you guys as creatives, and Stephanie, I know you'll have something to say about this too, but you know, we're in a really interesting time for documentary filmmaking. I know it's one of those toughest moments we've ever had. But just generally, you know, with the rise of streaming networks and these, you know, the limits to distribution, you know, what are the pain points you're feeling yourselves, and you know, do you have glimmers of hope about any of that in this moment? Whoever would like to take it first.
You know, it's a great question, and I think there's always glimmers of hope. I think, you know, filmmakers are resilient people, especially documentary filmmakers. You know, you're not in it to necessarily make money, right? You're in it because you love it. And I will say that I've had so many conversations with fellow friends who are doc filmmakers, and even like my agent, and she's like, this is the worst it's ever been. And so when you hear that, it's like, oh, okay, no one's getting anything off the ground, except for, you know, certain kinds of content, right? But I do see the glimmer of hope in the sense that people are getting creative on how to fund the things. It's not always a traditional, for example, grant route. Are there like private investors that are interested in doc? Like and I'm inspired by like Ava DuVernay, right? How she funded, you know, her latest film was, it's fiction feature, but through a Ford Foundation and through different outlets that aren't necessarily what you would think of when you're going to fundraise, right? So I think it's a time to get creative, and unfortunately, there's a lot of things happening in, you know, current moment, but and maybe this is optimistic in me that filmmakers are resilient people. What I'm really worried about is where are these films going to go, right? It's just really competitive to get anything out there. You know, if it lands at a great festival, that's wonderful, but does it mean it's going to have distribution? So, you know, for my film, like with What We Leave Behind, it's a Spanish language film, and we thought it would never see the light of day. You know, we were so thrilled that it premiered at South by, and it won, you know, 2 awards. It was great, but that, for me, that was like, I was great. This is awesome. It's out in the world. It was post-pandemic. And then Array took a chance on us, and that's how it landed on Netflix. But, you know, that doesn't always happen all the time, right? So I don't know. I don't know if I have an answer for that. I just know that it's complicated, and it's something that constantly asking myself, like, how to best navigate the current situation.
Yeah, I mean, we're at a pretty crazy inflection point that I wake up every day, with kind of existential dread about my career and job, but only because the sea change that is here actually isn't just about streaming. That one's kind of already done. I got into this as a feature filmmaker. I like going to see movies. I like seeing movies in theaters. Really, the truth is, the amount of content that's being made for very short format, places, TikTok and Instagram, and like that type of media, I think is it's hoovering up a lot of eyeballs, and there are only so many eyeballs, and there's only so much time that those eyeballs can spend looking at screens, which is a significant amount of time. But a lot of that time's going, to those things, and so that's where like the low burning existential dread in my stomach comes from. But it's not. I don't think it's fair to give that too much credit or too much power, because the truth is, I think just even in the last 5 years, the golden age of television kind of came and now has mutated into a new thing. I would argue probably not as great, and I'm very much rooting for this selfishly, that the 2-hour format still has value. There was an article that just came out in Variety or Hollywood Reporter or one of them that was talking about the value on streaming services of feature-length films, whether it was documentary or narrative films. It's kind of their bread and butter in terms of like 60% of their viewing hours come from feature films, usually old ones. And being the father of a 15-year-old boy, I'm shocked how much time he spends actually just going back and watching films that he thinks are ancient, from the 90s and the 2000s. So that gives me interesting hope for just kind of a variation of formats, and the fact that these eyeballs are actually coming around. I think there's an inherent thing inside of us that wants stories, and of course, as a feature filmmaker, I'm an advocate for stories that have a beginning, middle, and end in 2 hours. But that's my thing. And obviously, 26 Keys is a great example of making television that goes well beyond the constraints of what used to be network TV or anything else. But last time I checked, all the streaming services all have commercials now, and it's like, wow, you guys disrupted everything just to become TV again. But setting the viewership aside for a second, and just to talk about the state of filmmaking, and Stephanie can speak in far more detail about what's happening in Texas specifically. But right now, the biggest challenge for independent filmmaking is trying to stay in the U.S. at all. And it's fairly anecdotal just from my friends and my friends that are crew members. Nothing's getting made in the United States right now. It's all either going to Canada or really it's going to Eastern Europe. Even the Zellner brothers, who I mentioned earlier, good friends, I mean, they're off shooting their motorcycle movie in Eastern Europe. I just had to scout Vancouver for my next film, even though I stepped off the plane. It's a lovely place, but it was never going to happen. I knew it from the moment I stepped off the plane. But the cost to the production that we're working on, which is well under $15 million, is a $2 to $3 million hit, which is a significant amount of money. And so, when you're talking about these tax incentive programs and packages that are coming out of these states, they're really existential to the conversation about whether or not you could shoot here. You're already going to be losing money by choosing to shoot in the United States. And what is happening to the crew base in the U.S. Is that you can only go so long without work, because those productions aren't bringing those crew members to Eastern Europe. I want to be really clear about that. They're bringing the above-the-line crew members, but none of the below-the-line crew members. And so that's having a devastating effect right now. It's like a drought that's happening in American crew. They're going to have to find something else to do. And so what these tax incentives do are they just give us a fighting chance of bringing productions here. I mean, it's a little half-cocked and a little crazy, but the Trump administration has been talking about a federal tax credit. I don't know if you guys read it, but John Voight actually had like a multi-point plan. Actually wasn't that crazy. There were some things in there that were pretty powerful, and if God forbid they actually passed that, and we could combine it on top of Texas incentives, then we would actually have a fighting chance to keep production in the United States. But the existential crisis right now for production is just getting things here, and it makes things like what Texas did by passing this. You're still, very much in competition with New Mexico. You're very much in competition with Georgia. But right now, stages in Georgia are empty. Disney moved everything to London. It's just how it's going to go because the math is too powerful. But to talk about silver linings just briefly, the silver lining there is an opportunity for smaller budgeted films to get made, and it is an absolute lifeline to those projects. There will be really big projects that we absolutely need to have here that are going to take big advantages of that 1.5 billion over 10 years. It's less good when they say over 10 years. But
300 million every 2 years, that's nothing to sneeze at.
No, that's great. And I'm hoping to shoot a film here in the next 2 years, and we will apply, and we will hope for every penny that we can get. And it will make the difference between us being able to shoot here or not. So, I didn't want it to sound too terrible, but like the state of filmmaking in the United States right now, it's an issue because the math just doesn't add up. This helps a lot.
Would you like to respond to that?
I mean, I think I agree with all that they're saying. I think the one piece of hope for me specific to Texas is that there are filmmakers all over the state having conversations about helping each other fund their work. And that is something that has not traditionally happened. They've gone to other sources, but now we're seeing people come together and be like, hey, how do we make up this gap for each other? How do we sort of come together and help bring projects here? And that has been really exciting to see the community really come together. I agree that it's really hard, and it's the United States as a whole. Things are going overseas. I do think this new program, or the changes to the existing program rather, give us a bigger seat at the table to try to keep productions coming here. But I think, for the longest time, you mentioned Atlanta. Studios, even a couple of years ago, were booked out for 5 to 10 years. You couldn't get studio space, and now they're empty. And I think it's because there was this idea that movies had to be made at a certain level on a certain sort of for a lot of money, and things cost a lot more. And so we're seeing smaller movies start to get greenlit again. And that's why I think Texas also really shines. We've always had such a strong independent film community. We've always had such a strong documentary community. And I think we just already had the pieces in place. And now we get to be like, why aren't y'all here, right? But I do think, it is important, what happened in terms of the legislation right now. It does give us the ability to help a little bit more, and that's really important because I think productions, if you can give them if you can meet them halfway, they want to come. They want to film here. We have lots of different locations. We have really great crew, good breakfast tacos. Who doesn't want to be here? So, yeah.
Could you all talk a little bit about the talent pool here in Texas, both in front of and behind the camera, and And this is an interesting question in lieu of what you were just saying about people looking for work, but there's part of this incentive program is about helping to build a pipeline. Do we have that critical mass here already? What kind of programs are you seeing coming together that might help bring more people into this space?
Well, if you listen to any of the legislative testimony, it sounded like we were a desert, that the crew had left and the violins were playing. We have a lot of crew. We have a lot of talented working professionals here in Texas that want to stay here and work. We can always grow. Like any industry, people cycle out, they go do other things, they take a break, they go work in other places for various reasons. They age out, they maybe try a different career. And so like any industry, there is ebbs and flows, but we have crew. We're not like lacking that resource. In fact, that is one of our best resources, I would say. And so for us, it is continuing to grow the crew, making sure they get the experiences to help them grow and do other projects. You can't sort of jump right into a major feature film. You have to sort of work your way up. You have to learn, you have to train. And I think that's why we're really trying to keep the ecosystem balanced. We want our indie films, we want our commercials, we want our TV, we want our studio features when we can get them. So it's really important in that way. And I think one of the things that the legislature did this year is they gave us money for projects through the grant program, through the incentive, but they also gave us money to develop a workforce training program, and that will go hand in hand, and they have to. It's sort of economic development 101. You can't develop the industry without having the workforce. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, we're sitting at a place where the University of Texas pumps out new grads every year, and that's extraordinarily valuable. I gave a talk last year at Texas State. They've got a burgeoning film program that I think is really respectable. And so, I think your pipeline's here, plus people want to be here. Still, I think people still want to be here. They're not priced out yet. And so, I think the future is actually really, really bright in terms of, now I'm just going to be positive for this. It's really, really bright, actually, because as Stephanie's saying, it's funny. As bigger productions get kind of fewer and far between, then people want to make things. My only issue with TV, maybe not the only one, is that it's really hard to take the pilot script for your TV show and go make that as an independent film. It's hard to say like, this is going to be $5 million an episode, but I'm going to drop this down to $250,000 to go make it with my friends. But you can do that with your indie film if it's written correctly. And so I do think there's going to be a real kind of future for smaller projects, which those are the ones that honestly, it's kind of the snake eating its own tail. You've got these kind of smaller, short format productions going on that are feeding all of these social media channels. Those are eventually going to start to grow, and kind of the two things are going to connect. You've got a lot of people training in that industry. I think that's the majority of jobs out in California right now. You've got, sound technicians taking jobs on YouTube videos, which used to be kind of this, dirty word, but the truth is, if that's where the work is happening, if that's where people are watching things, those things are going to come back together, and you're going to see a lot more independently minded films, I think, coming out specifically from Texas.
There's a great history of that in this town alone, right? I mean, I think
for sure.
There's no question about that. As far as the incentives Texas has with this new program, this new legislation, how do we stack up to some of these other states that we're competing with? New Mexico, Georgia, Oklahoma. No Texan wants to film in Oklahoma.
No. only Texas.
I've heard.
It's hard to do a direct comparison because the first one, I'm gonna give you my elevator pitch, and my production accountant brain. Texas does not have a state income tax. When you have a conversation about incentives, the first words that get thrown around are tax credits. Those are usually tax credits that involve some sort of alleviating income tax liability. We already don't charge you that tax, so you're already benefiting from that. So the reason we have a grant and it has to get funded periodically every 2 years, like a roller coaster ride, is that there's not tax structure to give an incentive the way other jurisdictions do that. So we have a grant, right? And so our grant previously, before this new legislation, the maximum you could get was 22.5%. People saw that on a budget line and they freaked out. They were like, Georgia gives me 35, or Oklahoma is 37. New Mexico was like up in the 30s too. And they just couldn't compute. But if you actually looked at it, and I could do a comparison, like line by line, what qualifies and what didn't, we are gonna cut you a check with money, actual money, that will go in your account once we audit it. It's just not like we don't just give money out. But like 22.5% of your in-state spend that qualifies. If you get a tax credit, you have to sell your credit to a broker, and they take 12% off. They take a broker's fee. They're gonna charge you to convert that credit. And then if you're in a market where there are a lot of people and there aren't, like Atlanta was so popular because Atlanta has Home Depot, Coca-Cola, other big companies that have tax liability structure. And I'm totally nerding out. I promise I will stop soon. But people were able to exchange those credits on the market. But when there isn't enough need, then it actually, your exchange rate for your credit can go down. So you might get 50 cents on the dollar. You might get something else. And then 22.5% is looking pretty good right now. The other thing is we were turning around, and we still are, payments to the program in less than a year. Right now, New York State is like 5 years out that you have to claim your credit, right? And so it's really hard to do a comparison because there's lots of things that make Texas way more appealing. But I think when people are looking at that sort of bottom line in the budget in terms of the incentive, 25% base rate up to 31% looks a lot more palatable than 22.5. And so we're definitely in the race, and where we might have been not thought of first, we're definitely one of the first calls that people make now.
I'm trying to decide which direction I want to go here. There are also, if you could just talk through a few of the other, I was so interested, I joined a Zoom presentation recently that the Film Commission put on. By the way, they are so approachable and so friendly. If you are a filmmaker, one of the things I was marveling at in that conversation was they just kept saying, just call us. Like, if you have any questions about your individual project, we will talk it through with you, and we will help you figure out how this works. And we want to make sure that we can try to get you this money.
Yeah.
But can you talk a little bit about the stackable incentives? Is it stackable?
There are additional incentives. So the way that grant works is it's based on your in-state spend, and there are budget tiers. For anything, the minimum for, since we're talking about film and TV mostly, the minimum in-state spend is $250,000. Between $250,000 and $1 million, it's 5%. Between $1 million and $1.5 million, it's 10%. And then any in-state spend above $1.5 million, it is 25% base rate. So that is if your project qualifies for the program. Based on those tiers, you'll get those base rates. Now, there are additional incentives. There used to be 3. One was veterans hires, post-production, including Texas music, and then underutilized and economically distressed. The legislature thought that wasn't enough, and they gave us a buffet of options now. And they include, we're still going to keep the underutilized and economically distressed, but they now include Texas Heritage Grant, which has things that we're still trying to figure out how you audit, like about supporting Texas culture and portraying Texas in a positive light. And there's a rural grant if you film a certain number of days in a county with a population under 300,000. There is a veterans grant sort of carried over. There's a historical site grant if you film a certain percentage of your locations at certified sort of historical sites. And you guys are testing my knowledge. We've been doing these, but usually I have slides and notes in front of me.
You need to go through them all.
And then there's workforce training and a few other. There's a buffet, and now they're stackable. It used to be you could only get 1, maybe 2, and now we can stack them up to 31%. And so that's great news. Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I know on a lot of people's minds, because there is something in this legislation that refers to content, there's lots of questions about what does that mean,
Sure.
and what is going to be restricted. Jerk.
Well, it probably, I think it freaks people out.
Yeah.
But let me just say it this way. The program is a program that's funded by the legislature. And as one of my film school professors said, all money funding for your films comes with strings attached. You just have to decide which strings you want. So if you're coming through the program, there are rules you have to adhere to. With regards to content, there's always been rules that you cannot portray Texas or Texans in a negative fashion. That has always been there. The program has been in existence for 20 years. It is the highest ROI for any state incentive program, right? It doesn't mean that you can't make a movie. One of our legacy projects is Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right? It doesn't mean that you can only make movies about puppies and rainbows. Life would be boring if that were the case, right? So, but we do have to be good stewards of the program and the money that we are tasked with. So the content, there are now these additional grants you can get an additional award amount for other things like Texas Heritage, faith-based films, things like that. And I think sometimes people hear about the additional grants and think that that's a content restriction. It is not. It's something you can get an additional grant bonus for. With regards to the Texas or Texans in a negative fashion, don't make the decision for us. Talk to us about your project. We love all types of stories. Texas is a huge state with lots of different stories to tell. Talk to us. Again, we're not scary. We want to hear about your project, and we'll sort of walk you through what it could look like. And that's all I can say about content.
No, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Iliana and Jeff, you mentioned a project that you might be filming or would like to film in Texas in the coming years, which really was my question. I'm sure you can't say any more about it in this moment. But how does this incentive program change your outlook for the coming years, as far as projects you might try to take on or ways you might approach them differently to take advantage?
Go for it. I want to hear about your.
Oh, no. I mean, it makes it possible. I made a film 2014 with Warner Brothers called Midnight Special, and we had Texas scenes, and we shot those in New Mexico. It was really dumb. It wasn't a lot, you know, it wasn't a huge part of the film, but it was written for West Texas, and that's where I would have liked to be. And now I think, you know, in that situation, you have a real fighting chance. For this film, it predominantly takes place in Texas. It's a kind of road trip film that goes from Texarkana up into the Panhandle and Amarillo. And so, yeah, I very much want to be here doing that. Oh, also, I'm shooting a short film in West Texas in December. Yeah.
How many days do you have before principal photography?
Apply? It's 180 days and no later than 5 p.m., 5 business days. And so if you meet the minimum.
I'll tell him, I don't know, this one's for Tecovas, so we'll see. But it's a short film. It's like a real thing. But yeah, but I'm writing the one that takes place in Texas right now. And I think, you know, before all of this happened, I would be writing it going like, we're going to have to shoot someplace else probably. Or the other thing, which is probably what I really would do, is you just start calculating what limb you have to chop off, you know, to make it possible. And that's what, I mean, I'm shooting a film in the spring in Arkansas. And it's like, okay, yeah, like what do I have to take out in order to make this? And part of that's the marketplace and what it will bear in terms of your budget. But now I'm sitting here writing this excited about the fact that I'd like to go shoot in Amarillo for many, many weeks. That's been said before, I'm sure.
Just came from Amarillo.
But yeah, so I've got those two projects, and you know, those are worth talking about. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm, you know, all my films had been filmed here. Like, you know, What We Leave Behind was filmed in El Paso, but also in Mexico. And then, of course, God's in Texas, we shot in El Paso. I'm looking ahead into the fiction world. So I love documentary, but I've been working on a draft right now of this new film called Wayward that's about these two drifters living in El Paso. And so for me, this is exciting because it's actually makes it possible to think about actually shooting there, right, and taking advantage of that. So, and honestly, for like indie filmmakers, especially documentary filmmakers, like that's wonderful to know. I didn't know that was the budget, you know, and not to say all docs, like, you know, there's some that are made for less, but at the end of the day, like it's a semi-reasonable micro-budget doc feature, right? So I think for me, that's exciting because it allows me to just think about like, oh, how can I work more with different Texas crew here and do posts here? Because for my first feature, like I ended up going to Mexico City, and finishing the film there because it was a lot more affordable, right? So, but now knowing there's great people in Austin doing posts, like Eric Brand, who has his amazing sound designer, right? And it's like, oh, I could just stay here and finish a film here. So that was really exciting.
And there is a stackable
Post-production.
for post-production, I learned.
Uplifts.
I'm just here to plug the
No, thank
new
you.
incentives program.
You're
I'm
helping me
excited.
remember. I feel like I'm flying. I forget.
Okay, well, last thing, and then we'll get to questions. Favorite film made in Texas? Favorite film that should have been made in Texas?
Oh.
And this is no shame to the filmmakers, to anything else, if it was not, you know, we all know that there have been constraints. I can go first.
Please, yeah.
I'm ready. Let's go.
Well, okay, I'm going to go first with the one that should have been made, which is Hitman, Richard Linklater's Hitman, based on a Texas Monthly story, set in Houston, filmed in New Orleans. Just brutal for, you know, a hometown filmmaker, a hometown star to have to go to New Orleans to
Yeah, that's a bummer.
anybody else?
I'm totally blanking on this should have been made, but I
You
think
can pick either. You don't need
I think
either or.
my favorite Texas film at the moment, it's hard to pick a favorite in terms of endearment. So
I was thinking of that too, but also, boy, I'm blanking out now, but Paris, Texas, right, is filmed.
oh yeah, yes.
I love Paris, Texas.
Yeah. I mean, you got so many Tender Mercies, incredible Tree of Life, But HUD, although they shot a lot of the interiors on a set in California, but him driving around that pink Cadillac, that was a lot of Texas.
The getaway, I just remembered.
Yeah, I think Last Picture Show. Someone would have to check on this, but No Country for Old Men is the greatest film ever made. And I think they shot pieces, but they wanted to shoot more here, but most of it was New Mexico as a result.
It was here for a significant amount.
It was? Okay.
Yes.
So I don't know, that's like 50-50. Maybe it was more, I don't know. But that's the greatest film ever made, so that that helps.
Now we know. We can open it up to questions if anybody, I think there's a microphone. They're sitting here in the center aisle. Feel free to jump up there.
Have you guys looked in these lights?
Yes.
I'm like a moth.
I
And I can't see anyone's face.
only see silhouette now, yeah.
Oh, now yeah.
Since we're talking about the future of Texas film, I was wondering, Stephanie, if you could speak a little bit about the specific impact that having the long-term funding has, especially for television shows, because that was one of the things that was very difficult. We talked a lot about film, but large corporations that couldn't really plan on doing a multi-season show in Texas if they were on the roller coaster ride of funding, not funding, funding, not funding. Now with the 10 years, could you speak a little bit about sort of what you foresee for the television industry here?
Sure. I think it allows us to, TV's always been a sweet spot for Texas because of the way our program is structured and resident hires. People want to come here and hang out for 6 to 9 months on a TV show. But the thing that we were running into when we were less robustly funded is that we couldn't guarantee funding beyond maybe a season or two. And then they had to wait to know if we would have more funding. So knowing that the program is likely to be funded for 10 years, which is super exciting, can give us that certainty when someone wants to have a TV series put down stakes and continue season after season. So we're excited about that. And that gives our crews more certainty as well. If they know they're going to work on a multi-season show, they know that there'll be funding here so that they can sort of plan their lives around that.
I think that I want to talk a little bit about small to medium size films. The $200 to $800 million films, of course, we want them, and of course the legislature can influence that, but there's a lot of young filmmakers coming out of Texas universities and stuff, and there's just some harsh realities that hit you right away, which is money, and sometimes you can get a local grant, or you can apply for a Texas level, a statewide grant and stuff, or you can reach a philanthropist. You're in San Angelo or Fort Stockton, and they want to put their money, they want to send their check to a 501c3. In the last 10, 15 years, it was hard to get the Film Commission to adopt little filmmakers, and that would really be helpful, I think, because some foundation or something wants to get money, but they need the credibility of the Texas Film Commission to pull it off, or to get them to we might write a check, or they will write a check. Is that growing or changing?
I think we've always worked with fledgling filmmakers, if you will, student filmmakers. I think it's hard. We're a government agency. We're not a nonprofit, and we can't accept funds. Like we are the grant program financiers. There are lots of other organizations in our orbit that are doing some pretty incredible things to help fledgling filmmakers, the Austin Film Society, the Dallas Film Society. There's a lot, I'm blanking. Sorry. Yeah. But I do think there are other organizations, like Austin Film Society has Creative Careers program where they're training. They're not necessarily students, but they're sort of fledgling filmmakers and production personnel, and they're giving them lots of education and lots of help, training wheels to launch their careers. So I think programs like that already exist in that space to help, and I think we're just here to support them and amplify what they do.
I know that you're not a 501c3 and all that, but I'm just saying it's sort of an overlooked part. It's just, and it sounded like you have a background in accounting and stuff. People that have no idea what a spreadsheet is, they actually are trying to make the film come, through production. Thanks a lot.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that Towns Van Zandt film I worked on, AFS was the 501c3 fiscal sponsor for that. I don't know if you guys still do that. I'm looking at Rebecca.
Hello. I moved here from Colorado exactly 15 days ago, which is
Welcome.
Because of the incentive.
so I came from a state that famously has not had a great incentive in probably close to 30 years. Are we expecting to see more people like myself who have come from out of state to, populate the economy in a big way, to help fill out, those crew positions as you were talking about? Are you expecting to see more of that over the next, 10 years, you said?
I think the short answer would be yes. We're hopeful that happens. I think that happens sort of naturally whenever there's a new or updated incentive in whatever jurisdiction. You saw a lot of people sort of migrate to Atlanta or New Mexico, and now people are coming home or making Texas their home. Welcome. So I think we are expecting that. I think some of the residency requirements of the new aspects of the program were changed to help accommodate that, to help sort of grow the workforce, allowing more out-of-state hires for the next 2 years.
That was going to be my next question, actually. I had the privilege of working with 1923, the Taylor Sheridan show last year, which happened right down here in Austin. I was told by their production coordinator that you had to be a Texas resident for a certain amount of time in order to work on some of the Texas shows.
Yes.
And that was in June when she told me that. That was right around the time this
Right.
legislation went through. So is that still true? Or is that
Right.
something you're moving away from?
It's true. And in June, the legislation was voted in, but it wasn't effective. It became effective September 1. So at the time she was talking to you, projects hoping to achieve the incentive had to hire 55% of their paid crew and 55% of their paid cast had to be valid Texas residents.
Okay.
It used to be 70. Now, the new legislation allows for it to be 35% for the next 2 years, knowing that with $300 million, the sort of market needs to bear the weight of more production coming. And then it will slowly increase back up to 50%. But what I can say, since you're here now, is get your Texas driver's license, and then you
Working
will
on that.
count for the incentive.
The
Because we
Texas
only-
DMV is very confusing. Thank you very much.
It is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we, guys, just limit it to one question per person, too, going forward? Thank you.
I know there is, I guess, there's sort of this pool with Los Angeles and like New York saying that if you want to work in TV, then you have to, come over to the coast or up north. Do y'all think that there's other paths or other routes to take to making it to writing for screen or becoming a successful writer? Or do you have to leap into these big cities, basically?
I'll just say real quick, I think you're looking at a few examples of people who have done the
Yeah,
that
I'm
very
here. I
fast.
mean, I think the question you're really asking is, how do you get your foot in the door if you're based in Austin, and everybody's going to have a different solution for that and a different way around. I mean, Rick Linklater talks about hustling a lot. My solution was I made a film. I was a writer first because it doesn't cost anything to write other than the time that you spend doing it. And my way to get my films made was to make them myself. And so that was my solution. But not everybody's a filmmaker. Some people are just screenwriters. And that's a great thing to be. My advice gets limited there, because I would just say, well, go try and make your film. But that's not great advice for everyone. So I don't know, maybe someone else can tell you something. But I absolutely, I'm living proof that it's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add to that I think what makes Austin special is that there are a lot of people just creating all the time. And I feel like spaces, and we talked a lot about the Film Society, but like AFS, or I know there's a lot of like Austin filmmaker meetup groups. Like there's possibilities where it's, you want to be a writer, but it's also not just done in isolation, right? Even though it is a very solitary task to write a script, but you need to surround yourself with community. What does that community look like for you? And so I think taking that risk in making something, even if it's not, great the first time around, is fine. And like talking with my students, I'm always floored what they're able to do with absolutely no budget. And it reminds me of what we're able to do without not much. And there are just so many amazing voices here that I think it's like finding those people. And I know there's no right or wrong way to do that, but like, I think what I have taken away from just making docs and making my film, it's like the specificity of what makes you you. That is special, and don't get rid of that. Whatever that is that rings for you, that's what makes you a powerful writer, right? And so it's not like writing like anyone else, or like, oh, this script got into Sundance, so I'm gonna write something similar. It never works that way. It's like what makes you special, that's what makes, that's, I think, is what's needed in many times to break through. So don't shy away from that. And I don't know if that's helpful, but I always tell my students that, and sometimes they're like, oh, that's just, such a minute detail in a documentary. Like, why would I film someone drinking a cup of coffee? I'm like, because that informs character, right? How they drink that cup of coffee. So how you write and what makes you special, like, I would lean into that.
The other thing I would add is Texas is not wanting for film festivals. I know we hear a lot about South by or Austin Film Festival, and those are incredible festivals. But there are so many smaller festivals doing incredible things that you can find one in your community. And the barrier for entry is low or no cost. A lot of times if you volunteer for a few hours, they'll give you a pass to attend. And then you can go talk to filmmakers and writers and find your people, right? And those are the people who are hopefully help you sort of get in the door, and vice versa. So I think that I agree with them. Go and make your stuff and write. But it's also go find the where the community is, and sort of celebrating each other. And we have a list of film festivals. It feels like there's a new one every month. I just came back from the Amarillo Film Festival. It was delightful. We have a huge list of statewide film festivals. You can check them out, but on our website, texasfilmcommission.com. So yeah, I would just add that as well.
Thank you all.
I was just gonna say the Austin Film Festival is coming up, what was it,
Yes.
like
2
next
weeks.
week?
Yeah, next
It's like a writers festival. There's always writers to talk to, and like I'm always, it's awesome just to sit in conversation and, hear people speak on panels. So I want to totally do that.
Driscoll. Go
Yeah,
to
go
the
just sit in the
Driscoll.
car.
Yeah,
Thank you all.
yeah,
If you're of age.
yes. Order a soda.
I want to know.
Hey, my name is Raphael. I just recently moved to here from St. Augustine, Florida. I recently finished a short film, and you talked about this a bit, the filmmakers here, like, aside from putting it into the festivals until you get to that one festival, what would you say your advice has been getting that first feature film off the ground from your short film?
Yeah. Whatever amount of money you think you need, take a quarter of that and go make your film. It depends on how much money do you think you need for your first feature? Do you know?
Oh, well, yeah, I've shot the short film for $35,000.
Yeah.
I'm thinking I can do it for $100,000 or $500,000.
Great number. 100's better than 500. But I think those are realistic numbers, and I think that's what, I mean, it's what I did. We had $49,000, to make my film. That was in 2004, but we shot on film, and I put all of the money into the camera department so that we could shoot on film. Because at the time in 2004, you didn't have digital cameras as a realistic option, and I wanted to compete with cinema. I wanted it to look like cinema, so we shot 35 scope. But we had no money for anything else, and that's where we, chose to put everything. And I wouldn't be sitting here today if I hadn't taken that gamble. There are plenty of people that did take that gamble and aren't sitting here today. So you have to be aware of that. But even the Coen brothers said, if Blood Simple hadn't worked out, they just would have put it on a shelf and gone to make another film. And I'm not meaning to be cavalier about that. I often say it's not a question of if you're going to make your film, just when and with whose money.
Thank you.
Good luck.
All right. I think we are. Any other questions? I think we're all set. Thank you so much to all three of you for this conversation. Thank you.